back. Welcome to Star Wars on High. Thank you for stopping by the weekly live stream that could kick all of us off the camera at a moment's notice. We have
At
to
any
jump
time.
back in.
We don't know when.
We don't know. That adds to the excitement. Thank you guys for being here. It is another Thursday night as we kick off this new year. And we have a couple of things to talk about today, not just Bad Batch. We have some new Mandalorian news, some additional kind of fun, smaller stories we'll dive into as well. But before we get started, let's go around the triangle, say hello, let our viewers kind of start streaming in here as we kind of recap what's been going on this week. Ben, how you doing, my man? What's going on with you?
Guys, I was feeling great right up until this moment. Like, how come I gotta sit amidst all the debris and fire and just smoke hitting me from both sides? Like, I don't understand what's going on. I'm trying to talk about Star Wars here, have a good time. Maybe it's just my share in life. I'm gonna join Anakin and Mustafar and just gonna burn to death. I think all these dark feelings just got to me as we were talking about our favorite horror movies. Believe it or not, guys, we actually do enjoy movies outside of Star Wars, right? Josh, you like your sci-fi horror.
Love it.
Jimmy likes those, found
Slasher.
tape kind of horrors. Yeah, it's kind of fun. And I was thinking to myself, as I'm contemplating my week, what is the scariest piece of Star Wars entertainment I've ever seen? You guys, anything comes to mind?
I
Repeat
think
the question.
Yeah.
Scariest Star Wars that we've seen.
Oh, the scariest Star Wars that
Yeah, I'm assuming
Scariest
like
piece of
scariest
Star Wars.
moment in, I'm assuming a show or a movie. I'm thinking here. I think when I was younger, the answer would have been in Return of the Jedi when the Gamorrean falls into the Rancor pit and gets eaten. I
Okay.
really didn't like him getting eaten head first. That really bothered me as a kid. Something about anytime someone gets eaten like head first, it's kind of
Yeah.
disturbing. Like his little legs kicking as he like goes in. That as a kid, I hated that scene.
I think it's worse the other way around. You ever seen Jaws?
That's true. It is actually worse the other way around. I don't know. Yeah, fair point, Jimmy. But something about like the legs, like as he's
How
getting
about you,
eaten.
Jim? Does like a specific moment or a scene come to mind?
My first thought was the Vader scene in Rogue One, because that was the first time I
Pretty
ever
scary.
was like afraid of Darth Vader,
Mm.
But honestly, I think I don't know if it's the penultimate episode or the season finale for season 2 of Mandalorian,
Mm.
where he's fighting the Death Troopers. That
Yeah, that was
stresses
pretty
me out
scary. Yeah, that's a good
because
pick.
those things are like up there with like Terminator, where like if you're just like hand to hand fighting it, like you're just done for. So
They
like,
just rock him in the skull. There's
well,
like
that's because that's the
yeah,
thing,
exactly.
and like it
Yeah.
really reminded like when they tried to shoot him out into space and they just grab the door frame.
Yeah, it's cool.
Because it just reminds me of like the final fight in the Terminator where Kyle's fighting the T-800, and I'm like,
Yeah.
because
that was a
like you're
dope
not
fight.
gonna win.
Yeah.
You want to talk about stop motion being freaky? The end of that movie is freaky.
Yeah.
I was kind of just thinking about it this week because I'm thinking going back into my like Star Wars watching marathon. I'm like, what was the scariest moment? And for me, it was definitely not personally scary for me, by taking my younger brother to see Revenge of the Sith in theaters. And
That movie
watching
is pretty
Anakin
dark.
burn down on Mustafar, that's kind of
That's
like
true.
brought the debris, the whole little thing behind me, guys, into the conversation. Is that I couldn't believe there was like a PG-13 rated movie.
That's true. Yeah.
Are there kids in the audience? Like, what the hell? It was
Yeah.
really, really dark moment for Star Wars.
I did listen to the audiobook for Death Troopers, and that's pretty.
Yeah.
Oof.
Mhm.
Also, I'm pretty sure I called those Death Troopers earlier. Those are Dark Troopers. Don't correct me in the comments.
I think you
please.
said Dark Troopers. I knew
I
it.
hope.
At
I
least I
hope.
knew what you meant.
But
Well, we'll go back.
Yeah, the audiobook was weird, but I think the scariest part about that was just like the chapter headings, because it would just be like this ominous, like crying, screeching noise in the background, and they would be like chapter
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
And they'd be like
Yeah.
the flood, and you'd hear someone just scream, "The flood!"
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like, what is
ooh,
happening?
yeah. The audiobooks. Well, all that dark, depressing talk aside, it is Jimmy's birthday. It is Jimmy the King, his birthday. Welcome, Jimmy. Thanks for spending your birthday evening here with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Happy
man.
birthday, man.
As always. We were talking before. The reason what got us a little bit on the scary topics too is we were talking about some scary movies and seeing those in theaters, and it got me thinking how much different, how much more fun you have in those theater experiences. Those really memorable ones where the audience is really involved. Whether it's I remember opening night we went and saw Gone Girl, which was based on a book, and behind us there was a book club who went to see it together, full of like these older women who were there, and they were just cracking me up, like their commentary. It was such a fun experience. And um it's one thing I miss about Star Wars being in theater. Jimmy talked about last week how we miss it. It's like there is something magic about. I remember opening night for Force Awakens. We've talked about Revenge of the Sith, like all the excitement for the prequels. You do miss it. Theaters do enhance. And tonight we're going to be talking about two shows, Mandalorian and Bad Batch, which we're big fans of. But there is something different about going to the theater, taking an evening off, and being kind of isolated in that world for several hours that you just can't beat. You just can't beat it. And I miss it. And I'm hoping the patience is a good thing with Star Wars. I'm hoping that we're waiting and we're going to get paid off. And I think it's good. I think they had a big rush of Solo and Rogue One and those three movies, and it's been some time now. And I think when eventually it returns to the big screen, I think audiences they're going to be clamoring for it again, seeing on the big screen. All right. That whole spiel aside, we did have some show news, and I think I want to start with The Mandalorian. What do you guys think?
Sure,
So I'm going to
do
go
it.
ahead and, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and share just the trailer without audio, kind of as we talk here,
Yeah, that'd be great.
and I'll pull it up here and we can get rolling. So first off, as we get into this, I do want to ask, Ben, did you? I don't think you reacted to it. I think you had seen it come out a little bit late, and you were just like, whatever. It's a shorter trailer, so maybe not worth kind of the time.
Yeah, it just
Um,
came out of nowhere. I did see it. It was just such an unexpected moment. And like I just saw my Twitter feed. I'm like, hey, hold on a second. A new trailer? I just saw it and didn't feel like there was too much content to react. I was like, okay, maybe I'll discuss it with the boys, on
Yeah.
Thursdays.
Yeah, I agree. It is not like a crazy trailer, but what I did like most of all, Jimmy and I talked about this in a reaction, is it was high octane in the sense that it felt like the music and it was action at the forefront. It's like we're going on an adventure this season, and I think that's where Mandalorian's at its best. I really have enjoyed the episodes that I really enjoyed, like the season 2 premiere where we were fighting the sand dragon. Those kind of really fun set piece moments, I think, is where the show is really, really charming. And they seem to be promising a lot of that here. And we'll talk about specific moments, but that was the biggest takeaway for me. Is it just got me excited. I'm like, man, the music I thought was really good. Some of the visuals we'll dive into were just like, woo! I was like, we're back. Like, this is going to be what looks like a really, really fun season. Before we talk about specifics, though, Jimmy, what's stuck out to you, man? What was your kind of initial vibes on the trailer as a whole?
It just looked like this season was probably just going to be very heavily action packed, which I mean I'm fine with.
Yeah.
Looks like we're going to get just a lot of cool locations out of this one. I think. I'm not overly fond of the Order 66 flashbacks. I'm burnt out, but I'm just going to trust the system as I always do, and I will make my final judgment after I see it. I'm liking all the Mandalorians mainly because like I'm loving all of the color schemes we're seeing. Because like I think a lot of us when we're like, ooh, if you were a Mandalorian, like what colors would you have? They're like, you know, take Django's armor, but I want it to be red and black and done. But no, we got like so many colors that my brain never even would have thought to put together.
Yeah.
And it
This
was like
chess piece is teal right here.
this guy in the back, he's got a green visor and the helmet is like a peach color and it looks good. Like it's really
fun.
cool just to see all these like randomly paint colors that like you just wouldn't expect to be for this. And the best part about it is that none of them match, yet they all look like they belong together, And it's not just because they have the same armor. It's just, it just has that vibe. Like it's just one of those things that I love, especially when you look at like the Knights of Ren or I guess if you want to go old school, you can think of like the original ring wraiths for the Lord of the Rings. They all had like different helmets and all that.
Yeah.
They all looked distinct, like all different. You could distinguish each of them, but you could tell from, I guess, the architectural way they were designed, they are a group and they go together.
Yeah. I think to go on with what you're saying, Jimmy, I think what's interesting about this design is it looks, to me at least, it looks like this is what Mandalorians would look like if they were scattered across the galaxy with no homeworld. Like it's not this kind of militaristic, organized. It's a little disheveled. Like their armor's cobbled together of pieces they have and battle damaged, as they haven't really had a home base. And as we've seen in season 1 and season 2, they're basically literally living in the gutters. Like they are just finding homes where they can. Some are staying true to their, Mandalorian clan rules and organization. And I bet you some are out for hire or doing other things. And that's the lack of, kind of, to your point, Jimmy, like there is certainly a similar design language, but it definitely is no clear, like these are the red people and the green ones and the purple ones, and they're all different. It's like just cobbled together. We see
It
some,
kind of speaks
yeah.
to also to the expanded universe where in Knights of the Old Republic related storyline of the Old Republic in the video games, but also in the supplemental comic books, which actually took their own storyline in that period. You almost see that Mandalorian creed where, like you mentioned earlier, Josh, they feel like they're all cobbled together, where you basically had to scrape for every piece of the armor that you could find, maybe on the dead body. And there wasn't really much to the cultural affiliations or like specific species that needed to be Mandalorians. It's just the creed. If you follow the creed, you could be any species as long as they embrace you in the Brotherhood. And you had this very like signature, colorful, makeshift armor, and that made you a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of that here in that trailer. Like that kind of gave me, I reminisced a little bit. Okay, that looks cool.
And one thing, I know there are a lot of fans of the EU who might not like the way the Mandalorians have been represented at this point in history, but I will say I have felt like they've kept it almost open-ended enough where there seems to be different beliefs and sects within the planet. So you can think about how Bo-Katan is like, you're following like some old backwater religion about the Mandalorians, but like that crew believes like this is the way, like this is what we do. We don't take off the mask. And I like the idea that there's pockets of these various clans throughout Mandalore who have very strong feelings about what it means to be a Mandalorian, and they kind of hold themselves to those standards. So I think it does leave a lot of open room for like Mandalorians who follow the old ways or who follow new ways. And it really fits because Mandalore always seems at war with themselves or with others. And so it's no surprise there'd be a lot of differences inside their ranks. It is crazy though, just as we move on here, like maybe it's just me. He looks so much like, he just looks so clean. He looks so much cooler than everybody else. It's like if you looked at him, you're like, this guy's the leader. Like he looks so cool.
I was gonna say, like this is like if this were Power Rangers, you could tell who the leader was. Honestly, it's like one thing I guess that's always bugged me is like I'm so used to. I think the helmet on the right there, the orange one, is like the traditional helmet we're used to seeing. And Din's is so different. Like he's got that bar down the middle. And obviously the eyes are a little more tight, but it also like it's tighter down here. Almost looks like it's like fit form to his face. And it's just so different when you look at it, when you compare it to the rest of the Mando helmets we've seen like throughout all the books, games, movies, what have you. Thank you for Josh for having examples on hand. Because I know that's exactly what he's doing.
We're gonna see some collection here. Boom! Look at that.
I was just gonna bring it up here as you were talking about it.
Look at Join the Creed over there.
To your point, Jimmy, you're dead on with like the line down the middle really adds a whole. It just changes the whole helmet aesthetic. Just that small design choice in the no antenna really does like give the whole. I don't know, it gives it a whole different vibe. I couldn't agree more.
And and the way like the eye visor, it's thicker on yours, but in this shot here, it's so thin, and the line moving down the mouth, it narrows as it goes down. Whereas the rest of them, it's just like that straight flat line. It's just little tiny artistic choices that I find so interesting.
It is. It's thicker on mine, so they can mass produce it with the Boba Fett ones and the Death Watch ones without having to change the visor piece.
By the way, how heavy is that?
It's not super heavy. Here, I can't.
I feel like it would just be like super, hefty.
No, actually, it's surprisingly not. Like it's so I have this. So I have two of the Black Series helmets. I have the Din Djarin one, just because his design has become one of my favorites in Star Wars. It's really grown on me. And then I have the Trapper Wolf Rebel helmet, and the Rebel pilot helmet is way more uncomfortable to wear than these Mandalorian helmets. So if you're ever picking one up like that you plan to wear, the Mando ones are significantly more comfortable to wear. But the reason his design at first to me was like, I don't know. I didn't love it, especially when he didn't. The minute he upgraded to the full Beskar, he just looks so cool. Like I don't want to be a fanboy, but like I love his design. I think it's so clean. I think he's so intimidating on screen. I think back to episode 5 in the Book of Boba Fett, where he's walking into the meat packing plant with the Darksaber. It's just like his vibes. It's like you got the spurs clinging as he's walking. It's just he's got such a great design. I can't help but be a sucker for it. I love it.
This trailer definitely got is the visuals. That's the first thing that I was paying attention to. That if we're still in volume, it looks grander than ever before. The sets
Yes.
look bigger. Just like as they're walking across like the main streets, you see everything has expanded so much. It looks like a lot more money has been poured into this season. Yeah, right here. These
We talked
particular
about
shots.
this in our reaction. Jimmy said the same thing, Ben. He's like, it looks like volume has been expanded in these shots.
Right,
Yep,
right.
you're
Or
dead
maybe
wrong.
they're combining different, visual tricks and techniques, and not just relying all solely on the volume alone. So, which I think it's good. It's going to work for the show in the long run.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Good call out, both of you, on the visuals. They do look really polished this season. Really polished.
Yeah.
I think we take it back here.
But I wanted to mention also one thing, guys. When
Yeah.
we see the Din Djarin piloting his ship, his N1 starfighter, and he's there with Grogu, I found that a little creepy, man. It's seriously when he's caressing like the little kid, because you know what it is? It stems from my disappointment with season 2 finale, where I didn't feel any kind of connection between the two. Like the whole father and baby relationship just doesn't work for me. And here it just pushes it over the edge. I'm like, it's just a strange alien.
It's your cold Russian.
It's my cold Russian.
Man.
Yes, my cold bloodedness, my lizard
It
brain
is. It
can't process
that's
it. This.
That's
honestly,
it.
It makes me almost wonder where we're going to focus so much on the action. And I don't want to sound like old souring here, guys, but I hope we don't end up in another season where it's mostly visual flair and action, and there's not a whole lot of substance to it,
So to your point, Mandalorian. This is a show that all of us, I think, have mixed feelings on. We all feel kind of differently about the show, which is kind of fun. I think we all have had different experiences with it. I love this whole running through the rain. By the way, I love this shot here. It looks so. It just feels so fun. I don't know, and the visuals look insane in that right moment right here. I got to be honest with you. Even though I was lukewarm on season 1, really had a great time with season 2. I'm going to go out there right now. We can clip this later, and I'm inevitably wrong. I think this is going to be. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to set my expectations up for failure. I think it's going to be the best season we've had so far. And I think it's going to be probably my favorite live action season. And there's a couple reasons why. On one hand, I made a short video about this earlier this week. On one hand, it was like, I can't believe you wrapped up the Grogu storyline in the Book of Boba Fett in like one episode. Why did we spend all that time? In the other hand, I was kind of ready for that storyline to be over. Like if Grogu is just going to be part of the crew, like going on missions with them, like let's just commit to that and move forward and tell different stories. And it appears, and I could be being misled by this short trailer, it appears this season like Grogu's part of the crew. He's going to be doing his own thing, force choking people out there, and like we can focus on doing different things, not just how do I get Grogu home. Like that's not going to be the driving force every episode. And I hope. I think that's going to open them up to tell a lot of really fun, interesting stories. It is my hope.
He's not going to be Hermit Yoda on Dagobah. He definitely fits home in that particular cabin. He's like, this is where I belong. I came back to my daddy here. I'm not going to stay with Luke. And just like yourself, I'm waiting to move past that cutesy part. Like,
yes,
where is the story in there? Let's move forward with it. Let's talk about Din Djarin and the Mandalorians and expand that. And fortunately, the trailer gave us enough tidbits to like salivate over and say, "Ooh, I see where this goes."
Exactly, and that's my hope. Like this shot right here, we've seen it in the past, but this is the money shot for me. Like,
that's spectacular.
It's a spectacular shot. They're giving such. It's so cool to see what they've done with Mandalore, which I love the design of it in the Clone Wars, and it's really cool. We're going to see kind of the remains here of the Night of 1,000 Tears. Not the best evening, I'm going to say, in Mandalore here. So Jimmy, go ahead. So what I want to hear from Jimmy on here is, I know, like, I'm a big Mandalorian guy. Like, I really love their design. I have since I was little. I'm a sucker for that look. But I know you're more like, whatever on the Mandalorians. How do you feel as someone who's not like, oh, Mandalorians are the best? The direction the show seems to be going here. What are your feelings on it?
I agree with you that this is going to be one of the best, if not the best, like episode of like live action that we've got. I don't know. Andor is going to be hard to beat, but for the Mandalorian, it's probably going to be the best season because we're probably coming to the end of like a big story arc in this third season. Finally, Because like there really wasn't a whole lot that we got out of the first season. The
Right.
second season had a lot more bigger moments and gave us something crazy to look forward to in the coming seasons. I think where season 3 is going to struggle is the fact that they decided to put a massive plot point in the book of Boba Fett. Which
Yep.
since I've seen it, I don't care that much, but to those who haven't, and clearly there are apparently a lot that have not seen it,
Mhm.
they're very confused as to how Grogu is back. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, I knew that, and we all watched it,
Yeah.
and we all had the same thought. This is going to be a problem.
Mhm.
Nothing that can't be fixed. I'm sure they thought ahead for this, and I'm sure it's going to explain itself in the opening of the first episode to get everyone caught up to date. But you know,
I think where you're going though, Jimmy, and like we are like the optimistic, super friendly people here. But I will say, I think this was a mistake, and I made a video. It's probably one of the only one of the probably about a year old now, where I talk about the book of Boba Fett, some of its missed opportunities. This was something that I called out. Was like, okay, you gave us 2 really good Mandalorian episodes in the middle, but they concluded what had been 20 episodes of this other character story in the middle. It kind of came at the cost of the momentum Boba was building. Boba was like building momentum, and it took us out to give us 2 good episodes. Yeah, to give us 2 good episodes. So I'm not saying the episodes weren't good quality. And then it's like this storyline that we had this really emotional finale in season 2, where Din like literally breaks his religion, like goes full heretic, which is now apparently the whole storyline here is he's got to go back and get forgiven for his sins. So he gives up everything, his whole livelihood to for this kid who he's become enamored with. And it's like in 2 episodes, we just get it wrapped up in someone else's show. That to me always felt like, okay, like, is that really what that was building to? Like building all that time, bringing Luke back just for like a 1 episode. I mean, it was fun. I love seeing Ahsoka and Luke, and I won't say it anymore. I promise. Episode 5 was phenomenal. I love episode 5 so much. So I'm not saying they were bad quality. It's just like, that's how the story comes to an end. Just like a 2 episode arc in someone else's show. I don't think that was the right creative decision.
It's if they were just 2 standalone episodes about characters that we knew nothing about, perhaps within the context of those 2 episodes, the story is fine.
Tell a full story,
superimposed over 2 seasons of a previous show, it was just too quick, and it almost felt like retconning, saying, oh, maybe we'll go this direction, but maybe not. We can't yet decide what we want to do with these characters.
Yeah.
It's not a good place for a storyteller to kind of like make a decision on screen what you want to tell.
I think it was kind of already set, though. I think it's hard to pull is this retconning thing. I know you don't like legit like mean 100%. That's what they were trying to do.
Right.
It's just hard.
Like.
Oh yeah, for sure. It did feel really like out of place and random and
abrupt.
Because a lot of this stuff was like written well in advance. It's just hard for me to try to make a judgment on that one. I just don't know. It's just a me thing, maybe. I just hope that we get something that will help this move forward, because the story of the Mandalorian, like, it's cool. It just feels like it's kind of been at a standstill since season 1, because we were building to this moment that we're seeing on the screen here. Yeah. And we just took our sweet time getting there. And I think that's the reason that I kind of got so bored with Mandalorians, because I'm gonna be the old cranky fan here. I prefer Mandalorians from like the KOTOR games, where you could actually go around their planet and you interact with them and stuff like that. So when they brought the Mandalorians back in the Clone Wars, I was so excited.
Yep.
And then I see this dome and I was like, what is this? I was so confused.
I like it.
I was just like, okay, this isn't exactly what I was thinking, but
it felt like
it's on brand, that Mandalore would go to war with each other and completely kill their entire planet. That tracks, that tracks. I was just hoping I could see a little bit of before that happened, but I'm sure we've got time and we'll get there eventually.
Well, I think what happened, to your point, Jimmy, like, I almost feel like George and the creative team and Dave Filoni like had introduced this concept of this amazingly powerful warrior race who used to war with the Jedi and have epic battles and skirmishes. And then like it raises the natural question of like, well, where were they in the original trilogy or in this in the during were they in the rebellion? Like what was going on? And George and Dave were like, actually, they were a pile of ashes. It was almost like they had to, you know what I mean? It was almost like they had to be like, well,
funny you mentioned that they're dead.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they couldn't be helping. And now that's not to say they haven't, like in Rebels and the Clone Wars, I think they do a good job of explaining like what happened to their people. And Clone Wars does a really good job of filling in the gap from like, well, how was it this proud warrior race to like just gone for the whole original trilogy? They do a good job. So I'm not criticizing them, but I think that's why the Legends material is like, oh my goodness. And it's like, okay, we can't have them rolling around right now. So we kind of got to make sure that they're dead. My hope has always been, this is not what the show is going to do, but I think what has always excited me is the idea of, like I've said to you guys, if the show was building to Din, like reestablishing the Mandalorians and making their civilization, you could tell a lot of stories there about the political infighting and the challenges of trying to get a warring people reestablishing a foundation. Clans who often value strength and value battle and combat. How do you get them to align on a goal? Like that to me is a gold mine. And the show, is probably going to touch on ideas there, but will probably never deliver the idea of like rebuilding Mandalore, which I think is such a cool concept. Because I'll pass over to Ben here in a second, but as I've told you guys, there's something about the Mandalorians that just feels almost fantasy. Like they have like a legendary blade that must be won in combat to lead their people. Like that feels fantasy, like in a good way. Like I love that idea. It's like we have this mythical dark saber, only one of one, and like he who wields it leads our warring people. I love that. It feels very fantasy in a good way, which I think feels really fun in Star Wars. And I hope we get to see more of that, because that's what really excites me as a fan. That's what really gets me going.
Yeah.
So
I think Mandalorians as a group, within the larger fiction of Star Wars, represents this idea that, when you take any intellectual property, like for example, Dune, it was highly criticized. Even the first 6 books were written by the same author, right? Frank Herbert. He wrote the 6 original books, and they were continued by his son and Kevin J. Anderson. The argument is when you expand any universe, basically, you diminish its quality, because you're basically saying like, well, what happened with this character? And you stop toying around with the idea. I'm going to put him in this time frame, and I'm going to have these Mandalorians do this. Well, that's not going to jive with a lot of ways that the people supplied their own fantasy and how they imagine. Like when I was a kid, I did not think anything to Boba Fett. He was just this lone guy with this one-of-a-kind armor, and that's all there is to it. There isn't like a warrior race with the Creed. But in the instance of what Jimmy and I kind of like touched upon in terms of Legends, I think the benefit of the expanded universe was that you had comic books and novels, which weren't this mass media that we enjoy on television, which takes obviously so much more manpower and resources to produce. They sort of took the idea of Boba Fett and they went for a spin, and they weren't beholden to what George Lucas was creating. They were saying, okay, we're taking this cool armored guy. This is what George Lucas had in mind when they conceptualized the drawings for him. We're going to make a whole freaking race out of it. And we're going to put them in the Knights of the Old Republic video games. And because they sort of almost severed the link and made their own thing to it, it worked within its own context. But when you start taking that old age formula, thousands of year old Mandalorians, and trying to interject in between the prequels, the original trilogy, and sequels, you find those very, very interruptive, because they're like, oh, there's a little hole here, there's a little plug. Let's put Mando, Din Djarin, and little Grogu over here. And then you start raising questions like, come on, really? Like it keeps diminishing the quality of it, I think.
I think in this case, as long as in particularly in the Mandalorian, as long as the idea behind the show is to reestablish the Mandalorians as a well-known race moving forward in the timeline, I think it's the right choice. If nothing comes of it, I will question that a little bit.
Yeah, it needs to refocus. I agree with you, Jim. To
your point, Ben, I think one of the things that's become most destructive about Star Wars or any franchise is headcanon. And that's not anybody's fault. I mean, it's literally what we're supposed to do. Our brains are going to make us think, what if everything,
Mhm.
So when you have it so in your head, you convince yourself, this is exactly how this should work because A plus B equals C. And then when that doesn't happen, you're like, but it made so much sense to go this other way that I thought of, which thankfully I don't have that problem. I'm like, this would be really cool. And then it happens. I'm like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
Well, what I think you guys are both, what's interesting about this is you guys are both coming at it from different angles, but I think coming to a similar conclusion where I think what Ben is saying, not totally, but in a way, is like you almost don't want to answer too many questions. There's almost good to have some mystery about your characters. Like the idea that and so Jimmy's saying the same thing. It's like we have this headcanon where like, and that's part of the fun. Part of the fun of the Mandalorians was the mythology, like the mystery, like, ooh, they're these ancient people. And what
Mhm.
Ben you're saying is when you give us the answers, especially if they're not great, then it's like, well, you almost kind of ruined the fun, the mysticism, and over engineered it, and it's disappointing.
And I want to add to that point real quick
Yeah.
because I had this talk with Gail. I think it was like earlier this week or last week when I was talking about, I told her, I was like, there are a lot of things in Star Wars that I don't know, but I don't look them up to know. And I find it interesting. I'm like, yeah, I could, I can't remember the specific example I had given her, but I think it was something about something in the Old Republic at some point. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know why this happened. I just know that it did. And I was
Mhm.
like, I wonder why that is. And she's like, you could just look it up. I was like, yeah, I could. But for some reason, there's a lot of questions in Star Wars that I just like to think, I wonder why that is. And then I
Yeah.
just don't act on that, which I find really weird, Not like
It's
it's
nice
going
to
to
have some
destroy
mystery.
anything, but I'm just like,
No, but it's nice to have some,
I guess
it's
it's
nice
just,
to have your own.
you add a little pizzazz to it.
That's right. Okay, well, that's not about the Mandalorians. As I should wear the helmet for the review when it comes out and try to talk like muffled the whole time.
I was gonna say if you put I'm curious to sound what did it sound like if you put that on and started talking through the mic.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to find out.
so you start doing that, and Ben and I will have a discussion.
Okay. Well, as you do that, the next discussion point here was, what do you guys think about? So I have Coruscant pulled up here.
Coruscant supremacy. The end.
Well, A, yes, but B, what this made me think about, and I'm curious what you guys think, is how like it feels like we're gonna be planet hopping a lot. They show a lot of locations in this season. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we definitely saw a lot of different architecture, a lot of different designs, weather, etc., going on. So that kind of leads me to believe, we're going to be swashbuckling throughout the galaxy. Returning to Coruscant, and I'll go to the next frame because I think it gives some interesting context here. It seems to be, with this the Empire's kind of cloning operation going on. What did you guys think about this? Where do you want to do? Well, don't have to speculate where it's going to go, but I don't know. Are you happy to be back on Coruscant this time in the galaxy?
Yes. Does this scene look bad? Yes. Do I care? Not at all. He straight up just left us to talk about this. Okay. Well, here's my take, Ben. I'm glad to be back in Coruscant because me personally, I feel we've been starved of it.
Really? I like that.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
We can definitely hear you, Dim Jarring.
How clear is it?
It's
honestly,
pretty clear.
Honestly, I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this is so funny.
I can hear you guys pretty well too, honestly. I can't tell if I'm yelling though, so it makes it a little challenging.
You're not yelling. I'm disappointed I'm not seeing little Grogu by your side.
I don't have.
Damn it!
I don't really have
Didn't you
any.
think of everything before this podcast?
I'm not a huge Grogu fan, like from a merch perspective. I've always found him like a little. I don't know. Like I'm not a huge Yoda guy either. The design has never been my favorite. It's like,
I don't know about you, Ben. I'm more impressed that he can hear us.
I know, right?
I can hear you pretty well too. Honestly, I got the headphones on here.
That's the best part is the headphones.
Nice. Now the next task is to retrofit the headpiece right inside the helmet. That's the next stage.
Like this is some Hello Greedo level hilarious.
I should start doing all of our videos like this, Jimmy.
I mean, I wouldn't.
You
be
should
opposed
start
to
your own
it.
Creed, I think.
I wouldn't be opposed to it. It's so funny.
My head looks huge. Okay, sorry to get us off topic here, Jimmy. You were talking about Coruscant. Take us back in here.
I feel we've been a little starved of content from Coruscant because the only up until recently with Andor, we hadn't had it since Revenge of the Sith. That was it, and like I want to see more Coruscant or Imperial Center at this point. it's just such a mysterious planet where we're like, we really don't know that much about it because we've only seen like 3 major locations in this entire city. So going
And it would
back,
sort of make sense for a group of mercs,
what just happened?
slower, shadier
My
corners,
bad.
like Ahsoka would,
It's
right?
hard to see, and so I hit. I was trying to show a comment, and I just removed Ben from the stream. Go ahead.
Start over,
continue.
Ben. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that it would make a lot of sense for a group of mercs to kind of dive deep into the underworld of Coruscant, sort of like Ahsoka did during Clone Wars, right, when she was on the run, and explore that world from their perspective, the way that we have never seen before. Maybe they can swagger around, and the general populace would probably not know who they are, aside from the darkest places, and all of these like crime lords say, oh, these are Mandalorians. They're gonna shake up basically the crime world of Coruscant.
And I think one thing, and I think that's going to start up pretty soon, but I think one thing that people are not taking into consideration, because I know there was the talks of Dr. Pershing here, and then we saw the that rebel pilot, I can't think of his name, but we see him in this trailer too, and it looks like Dr. Pershing may be discussing like with the New Republic, like trying to like give information so he gets a lighter sentence, real world problems. People don't understand, though, even in new canon, at this point, Coruscant's still under Imperial control. Like, sure, like riots broke out and stuff, but like this isn't the New Republic yet. This is still heavy Imperial territory. So like Dr. Pershing is fine. He is not like, well, I guess, you're in the Empire, you're never really safe, but he's not like free on a New Republic style Coruscant. No, it's still very much under Imperial control.
It'll be interesting to see how they
and they're still lying about the Emperor being dead. So,
well, what I really liked about Andor, right, was that view of like living in the Empire in Imperial Coruscant, and so this will be kind of a cool, different era view of Coruscant, which I think
this will be very interesting because this is going to be about the time. Yeah, I will never forget, the very first, the opening of the Aftermath trilogy takes place as they're bringing down the statue of Palpatine on Coruscant, and like riots start breaking out, and there's like stormtroopers or like scout troopers really that are like trying to like hold everyone together, like riot control. And I'm like, this is insane. So this time, we're about between 5 and 7 years after Return of the Jedi, seeing the state that Coruscant is in is going to be very interesting.
I like it a lot. I like that. A good call out there, Jimmy. One thing I have,
what you get for reading.
I have Steve's comment up here. I was blind at the time, so it's hard for me to find the actual moment. But what Steve is referring to is probably the most elite moment in the trailer, which is a pub scene with like a droids only bar, and we have just like three battle droids just chilling over here, just like, hey, I love it. I love the fact that they're still kicking. They're still out there in the galaxy, just making away. I love
this
it.
astromech in the center of the screen, this like with the white body and like that turquoise color. That is my new obsession, because again, my brain never would have thought to put those colors together.
It's true.
So now I need it.
I love it. It's such a fun. I'm sure it'll be a goofy moment. We have.
It's going to be so much fun to hear them talk, because they're going to have that high pitched wow noise. It's going to be so good. But I'm loving all these new droids.
Yeah, there's some cool designs in here. A lot of toys, baby. I'm buying this whole set, this whole cantina. I hope. Oh my gosh, my hope. I just thought of this right now. I'm sure someone's already made this comment, but I really hope they have like the Max Rebo, like a droid version of it, where they have like the but like their own like techno.
It's like techno or something.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd love it. Oh, that'd be so good.
One thing I really love is we have the white droid in the very back. Not this one front and center, the one in the very back.
Kind of looking like the first early designs for C-3PO.
Yes. So that droid, I believe in Legends, there's only 2 of those. And the story behind it is really creepy. I was reading about it because I just, one of those days where I started diving into lore. Because the first time we see that droid is in the Sandcrawler in A New Hope. We see it again walking through the streets of Mos Eisley when they're headed to the Millennium Falcon. Those are supposed to be the only 2 droids, and they're like sibling droids, and they're looking for each other.
Oh,
it's painful.
That's
but
weird.
so seeing it here, I'm like, ooh, that's a weird joke because like it's such a creepy design when you really look at like the faceplate. But
Yeah.
let me just spit random lore out at random. You know,
Oh,
how I
that's
am.
okay. I didn't even notice that. You're right. It's a really unique design. I didn't
But
even
the bartending droid, I'm getting some like RoboCop vibes.
he does big RoboCop. He does. But going to this moment, which is one of the best moments of the trailer, we did skip actually probably my favorite moment in the trailer, which is not Order 66, but again, we are seeing. I was one of the fans who never thought like Who Saved Grogu was a big plot line. It does appear they are building towards
That's
some
a
reveal.
fair point. I don't know why I said that earlier. We got to see who rescued Grogu. So
Yeah,
I'm fine with this scene. Ignore what I said an hour ago.
Well, so what's interesting to me is like, are they gonna pull like it was some established Jedi, or are they gonna be like, hey, it was just like Bill just like saw this guy? I'd kind of prefer that if it was just some Jedi who just did it.
Jedi Bob,
Something like that, where it's like, hey, I saved a kid.
You know Jedi Bob, right?
Yeah, it's Ben's alter ego.
No, back in like 2003 when they released the Lego sets for Attack of the Clones, they put out the LAAT gunship, and with them was just a nameless Jedi. Like he didn't even have any. The stud face was just like the generic smile.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah,
and he was called Jedi Bob.
Yep. Hey, I'd love it. That's the kind of thing I want. I'm looking at it right now. It's a great figure.
Right? It's just so random.
It's literally just a yellow. It's just like the standard yellow.
It's just the curve and the dots.
Yeah, gotta love it. Gotta love it. Well, regardless, they're going to show us, which I guess is a fair question to answer. But it goes to Ben's point. Maybe we just didn't need to know. Maybe it could have been a better mystery.
Yeah.
But after this scene was my favorite part of the trailer, which is when we see the TIE interceptors in a gunfight with a Mandalorian shipyard. Just like that is such a good. I love that. That's where the budget went. Ben talked about the budget went up. So we gotta. I love this. I love this through
this scene's pretty hot. I'm not.
I love it. I love the through the trench run here. It looks really cool. Big fan of that scene. Big fan. Yeah, that's what got me. That was my favorite shot. I'm like, ooh, gonna have some fun. I think back to season 2, the episode with the Ice Spiders, when the New Republic X-Wings are trying to arrest Din, and there's these shots of them above the clouds with like the sunrise. It's just so like, I love it. I love those shots because it feels so New Republic. It feels like it's this new dawn. Like we got these X-Wings out patrolling, and we got them, stopping these smugglers or what they think are smugglers. And I've really loved the ship kind of work they've done. The
ships look so real, partially because they are like practical, but like in the early part of that episode where they're like, can we see your like scan docs and all that? Can you like send that all over? And he's like, hey, can you switch to channel 2? And then you see the S foils open. And I'm like, it just like it functions so real. I was just like, ooh, this is gonna get spicy.
I really loved I just love the ship design for them. It's gonna be so cool.
Oh, the Mandalorian.
I totally forget what they're called. I have literally the Lego set behind me. I always forget what the ship class is called. I'm just gonna Google it. But I love it. It's gonna be so cool. I'm very excited. I'm very hyped for that. I like the fact that there's just TIE, like some row groups of TIE interceptors out there as well. Like it feels like the Wild West in the galaxy with these little kind of clusters of groups, which I really enjoy.
Yeah,
looking fun. Grogu being exposed to violence at a very young age.
It is a Comric class fighter or transporter.
See, this shot kind of brought me back, which in the first season we saw the group of Mandalorians working together, which I thought most of the episodes should have focused on instead of going like on different. Spend as much time as possible fleshing them out as a group and just give us more of that. And this sort of in a way brings it home. That brought my attention back to it. Like I found my pulse again. Like, okay, this is what I've been asking for. This is what I want to see. This was one of my favorite episodes in the first season. When all of them come together to back Din Djarin up. That was really, really fun. So
I like it a lot.
This is going to be sad too, because if you look right there, the IG-11 statue has just been destroyed.
And you'll also see, first of all, there's like stormtrooper helmets here in the.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is cool. And there's also a dead Mandalorian right here. Throwing that out there.
Tough.
But what I like, Ben, to your point, going in there, that's what's been really well done, I think, about the Mandalorian culture is like they'll be like at each other's throat and trying to take each other over, but like they come when they need each other, they come together. And like I've really liked how they've executed that. Because with Vizsla here, like he's openly like just tried to take out Mando several times. Like
It's that mentality of like, I had a friend in high school. He would get picked on a lot, and I was like, "We are the only ones allowed to do that." So, like,
Yeah,
we'd
exactly,
we'd have
yeah.
fun with him. We'd go back and forth. But if someone else was involved, I'd be like, "No, that's not how that works."
they have honor. They have their own code of honor, and I like how they show it. It's like, hey, we respect winning. We respect dominance. We'll like fight for dominance among ourselves. But, like, you don't come at us. Like, we're our own people.
Yeah.
I've always liked that. So it seems in this shot, and again, I'm not going to spend a lot. I'm not good at speculating anything. It looks like we had some night owls here, and what looks to be a cluster of Mandalorians going through the town, and then the Babu. I don't even know.
Babu Frick.
I don't know, but like who's the teammate here?
That's
Bobby Frick.
Yeah, but like there's two of them, so we got a buddy here we don't know, right?
Bob too.
You got Babu Freak and you got Mamu Freak.
They're dad and mom. I love it.
Yeah.
Good call, man. Good call.
Yeah.
They're gonna be. I swear. I feel like they're gonna be the. What was it? The little. The old couple in the Never-Ending Story. It was like the scientist guy.
Yeah.
I wonder what planet this is. Do we know what planet this is, Jimmy?
This is Brooklyn, 100%.
It's
Dan's like, I walked by this morning.
This gave me, I don't know why, like crazy Upper Queens, like Brooklyn vibes. I'm like, what the hell?
I live here.
What?
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. All right, and then we have the Grogu. I'm on my headcanon. Speaking of headcanon, is Grogu just fully commits to the dark side and just becomes a terrible user of the Force and just abuses and Force chokes people. Obviously not, but they are showing you that Grogu is he's just chilling now. He's just out there like Force choking, throwing you around. He doesn't care. He's all in, baby. And there's another shot where they're kind of like rolling into town together, right? We looked at earlier. Yeah. Yeah, look at that. It's a whole new man. They're partners now. You know what I mean? They're leveling up their relationship. The son. It's like this is Kratos and this is Atreus. Atreus in the first game, kind of annoying, kind of a baby, right? Second game, leveling up, right? That's what we're seeing.
The planet name is Navarro.
Navarro. Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess that makes sense.
It's the same place we've been seeing.
It just is so much. It's like so much upgraded.
Just, Grief Karga has just, put his blood, sweat, and tears into rebuilding the community.
Man, the visuals are so good in these flight scenes. One other fun call out here is, well, I shouldn't say fun call out. I hate this character. I hate her so much. Everyone else seems to like her. I've hated her since the first episode she was in, and she's back every season. They don't ever get rid of her. I know, it's so funny, man. Like,
awesome.
I'm like, I hate this character. How do they keep bringing her back? And he's got his own droid now.
Of somebody put like Ripley and Joe Pesci together, and it's like basically her.
Look, I think Kelly Motto is a great character. I think she's just funny.
Everyone likes her but me. I'm the minority, but he does get his own R5 droid. So there we go.
Not his own R5 droid. That is the R5D4, sir.
Oh,
he's the reason the Empire was defeated.
Look at
by blowing his own motivator, so R2 would have to go instead.
What?
You put some respect on his name.
What a bay. and then we have so my guess is after the Mandalorians conquer Navarro, they launch off fireworks because that's
they go through Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah, I love it. So they're flying in there, hitting the hyperdrive. There'll be some shenanigans, I'm sure. Overall, looks fun. We talked about this a lot. I've enjoyed. Is that a Rancor on his jacket? Yes, it is. Is that what that
indeed.
is?
That's a Rancor.
That's what I thought.
Rancor Squadron.
Love the jacket. I need to be one of these. What do you guys think? All right. That was season 3. I'm excited. I think the trailer didn't give away too much, which I actually am a big fan about. There wasn't like,
Yeah,
there's mystery left.
No clue what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's mystery left, which I think is exciting. I hope it delivers on the fun because I thought season 2 was a lot of fun. That's the big word for me. I love the episode where they first run into Bo-Katan when they're on the ships and they're like the Mon Calamari, you're like trying to capture him and use him as I love that. I thought it was a lot of fun. The planet hopping and everything was really cool for me. So I hope we keep that momentum in season 3. Quick thoughts on Bad Batch. Episode 4. I gotta be honest, I had a very short review for it because I don't think there's a lot to like deeply analyze or break down. I thought it was a fun episode. I like that they're giving Tech some time because he basically got no time in season 1. And it's nice that even though it was a brief kind of fun side quest, it was nice they gave him something. But overall, didn't blow me away. It was just a fine episode. I don't know. Anything you guys want to add on Bad Batch?
Yeah. Like you said, it's good that we left it for the last in this stream because there's not a whole lot of story to chew through, and it's fine sometimes. I did not
Yes.
have any issues with season one, and I felt like each and every episode contributed to overall story, and it was interesting to sort of observe my own bias watching this episode because on one hand, you can't say that it's obviously a filler episode. That goes without question. At the same time, you can't say that it's completely devoid of purpose because it does drive our characters a little bit forward. It showed us that whole intrigue involving Sid, right? It shows that
Yes.
Tech's, IQ and his ability to strategize and look forward to things and like basically outsmart every other racer. But it did two things for me which I did not enjoy. One of them had to do with my personal bias, and second one, I think I just want to throw it out there and ask you a question, guys.
Yeah.
Number one is just I think we've spoke about it, especially you, Josh, and I, since we had the podcast on my channel talking about Star Wars prequels. Is just the Phantom Menace was really, really a hard experience for me. I did not enjoy most of the film. And when we got to the pod racing scene, my younger brother sitting by my side, who's 6 years younger than I am, he loved it. And he said, Ben, one of my favorite memories from the childhood watching that movie was the pod racing scene. Why? Because it was so thrilling, so exciting. It's without a question so beautifully crafted scene. It's great action sequence. But for me, it only added salt to the injury because it didn't do anything for what I felt with a story that I felt was not there. So, it was my personal bias looking at this like, oh, here we go, man. Another pod race scene. Really? But once again, when you look at unbiased, what's there, it's well put together. There's a lot of great sounds there. There are a lot of great shots. It really conveys a sense of speed and whatever the episode needed to accomplish. However, there's one gaping narrative hole there, which I don't understand how to reconcile when it comes to the prequel trilogy. And that is Anakin Skywalker is supposed to be the only human who can pod race. And you can call all of these races or these machines whatever the heck you want. As far as Ben over here is concerned, that was a pod racing episode because they were going supersonic speed with added difficulty, all those
With guns,
crazy little course obstacles and stuff like this. So it's very, very difficult to see that and say, like, okay, hold on a second. On one side, he is a clone. You might make an argument that he's a superhuman. He's
genetically modified,
even amongst clones.
Yes,
but he either has access to the Force or there's something really doesn't work here because the only way that Anakin was able to defeat his opponents and win that race is through the miracle of the Force. Why? Because he never finished the race prior to Qui-Gon Jinn. I call it plot armor. Qui-Gon Jinn lands on the planet. They need to take the kid. The movie needs to move forward. How does the kid get off there? He needs adult supervision. He's 9 years old. He doesn't have agency to accomplish the mission on his own, right? So you might say, okay, through the miracle of the Force, Qui-Gon Jinn alerts the child's mind to it. And he says, look, trust in yourself. Trust in your instincts. You're going to win.
Yeah.
It kind of sort of works there.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Right?
Yeah.
But then you have this dude from the Clone Force 99. It's like, oh, by the way, you don't need the Force. Bam, let's go. Strategy. I'm like, what the hell, dude? What's going on? You guys lost me here.
But he's
I want to
cheating.
hear your thoughts, guys. Like,
no,
what
I
the
took
hell?
it. Your justification, I think, it's like he's a clone, so it's like he's it's genetically modified, and he's also like a ridiculously smart clone at that. So it's not a human. I mean,
Is the Force smart?
No, the Force. So when Anakin uses it as a child, it's like, oh my goodness, this child completed a race by divine intervention, for lack of a better word, right? That's what the Force was in that case.
Mhm.
When it's like, well, this clone who's been like programmed and trained for these kind of battling and maneuvers is able to do it as an adult. That to me is like, well, that's not the same thing as how impressive it was that Anakin did it. And we're not going here because it's silly, but my interpretation was that pod racing was like Formula One races. That's a lot. It's faster and more technically demanding than maybe like a NASCAR. Although NASCAR is very demanding too, but it's just different. One is at a higher speed. Like this one to me looked a little bit slower and more like you have guns and axes and you're trying to kill each other, and less like, oh my goodness, the ability to maneuver such an unstable pod through this insane course was like unhumanly achievable. These things were kind of like chunky little like do, you know. So that's how I look at it. But I don't know.
Jim?
Yeah, let me sum this up for you. Riot Racing and pod racing are not the same.
Have we seen Riot Racing before?
Therefore, yes, Anakin is the only one who can pod race. The end. Yeah, because it's Riot Racing, it's not pod racing. I'm not going to sit here and say he shouldn't be able to do this, although I would put my money on, if it is about the same, definitely the enhanced characteristics of the character probably helps. And I think it probably played out better. I really thought Omega was going to jump in that pod and go off. I really did.
I did too. I was like, oh my goodness.
Okay.
But
we gave it to our boy speculate whether she's force sensitive or not, and thus
see, there's a lot of that speculation on her being force sensitive. I'm like, why is there speculation on this? Why does she have to be force sensitive? Guys, relax. I mean, everyone has midichlorians when you think about it. So technically, everyone can be force sensitive. It's just how hard you want to work for it.
It's a touchy subject.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject. We don't talk about it anyway. Was this episode filler? 100%. Did I like it? I sure did, because this one gave me Old Republic vibes. This one gave me some Shadows of the Empire vibes, because at first, when they were going toward this track, I was like, oh my God, are we about to see a pod race? But I saw how the track was laid out. I saw the kind of people in the arena. I saw like the way the announcer was taking hold. He's like, we are not liable for any death or injury. I'm like, this is some underground. This is some swoop bike racing. This is some of that, the racing you do in KOTOR to win back Bastila.
Right.
That's what I got out of it. So I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. Plus, like I told you guys like several times, like before we start streaming, I'm like, when it comes to video games, like I have a soft spot for racing games and I don't know why. So that probably plays into my bias here as to why I enjoyed the episode. The people that complain about filler, read books.
There are chapters in books that are, yeah.
I mean, it's like I tell people, like, with anime is very notorious for throwing in like 30 episodes of filler. Read the manga. There's no filler in there. Again, nothing massive to take away from this, except for the one thing. It brought Ernie Hudson into Star Wars, and I could not be happier.
And
love Ernie Hudson.
Well, a character I actually really liked this episode that I normally wouldn't. I like Teo. I like that character. I thought he was actually funny.
Great. He was so funny.
I thought he's John Rufio, right? For those who watch Community.
From I know him from Parks and Rec.
yeah. So he that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Thank you. That's what I meant for Parks and Rec. So I actually like that character. I actually thought it was kind of funny. Like, he was supposed to be annoying, but it actually worked. I thought it was like charmingly funny. Like,
we're talking about the droid, right?
Yeah, Teo. Yeah,
like the flipping face.
I thought he was really funny. I thought he was well executed. I love when he got run over the second time.
That was so good.
He was like, it just gets smashed. It's such an obvious joke, but like it just works, man. I just liked it. It made me chuckle. But one thing about this episode that the end of the episode did get like weirdly dark. It was like, whatever you do, don't trust Sid. And the music was like, and that's the thing. I was like, oh my gosh, like what happened here? Like,
and there's only like 3 ways that can play out. That either means that Sid's going to turn him into the Empire and everyone's going to be like, Sid, how could you? Sid's going to do something that looks like they're turning them in only to save them later on and be like, I needed you to believe that I was going to double cross you, but I'm here to save you now. Or 3, nothing's going to happen.
I think it's going to be the case of the second instance where they all are going to doubt her for probably a very good reason. And her consciousness is going to basically guilt her into helping them and saying, no, I'm above this. This is not the old me anymore. This is Sid 2.0, and I'm going to help these guys no matter what. Even if she has to sacrifice herself, which I think would be a great emotional.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. Same thing.
So
I would love that.
4 things that could happen. My second one was a little different, but yours, no, that's a good point. It could be I can't, out of the goodness that I care.
They're family now.
Yes.
The presence will be destroyed, and I care.
Yeah.
So this is totally like a Grinch moment there. Definitely, that's good point. Good point.
I would like that a lot. Ben, your mind is where mine was. I think it'd be a good arc for Sid if she actually did like this kind of like, underworld run-in. Like she won't even acknowledge that she likes them, but like in the end, they had become this misfit family. I think that'd be a really good arc for her character. I hope they do something like that. I think that'd be nice. I will say this too, on your guys' point about filler episodes. I think part of it is drawn from, so as people who make Star Wars YouTube videos, not professionally, we do it for fun, and we have small followings who love to talk about it with us, and we appreciate you guys. I think a lot of the problem with filler episodes for me is based on the fact that every episode now has to be an event, has to dominate social media, has to generate conversation. And if the episode doesn't, and this happens in episodes of like House of the Dragon, where if something crazy doesn't happen, people are like, well, it's kind of a boring episode. And it's because I think people are so conditioned now for every episode to be like a great talking point, great, like, let's grab the screenshots and let's break it down for a week for the next episode. And this is not every episode has to be that. Not every show has to be that.
And that's so interesting because you look at episode 3, realistically, not a lot happened in that episode.
Yep, I agree.
Yet it was still so heavy that we had to talk about it for days.
Yeah.
It's such a good episode,
And
So
you need sometimes to take respite from heavier, tenser moments. Even in a novel, you need to have that filler chapter where you just sit down and allow the moment to breathe in.
To breathe,
and, like,
yes.
take everything
Exactly.
that happened.
So, and because I will never understand the people that are like, why isn't this filler? Why don't they just make it more main story? Why don't they this? Why don't they that? I'm like, because they know more than you do. And I'm not saying that to be rude, but like, there's a reason they're the ones writing the story.
They're planning this thing.
You
Just be patient for it.
Yeah, you can openly disagree with that statement. You can openly, and that's totally fine.
Yep.
But it's just like how it goes. So I truly think, if we put out season 2 of The Bad Batch and they cut all the filler out and just gave us the main story points,
6 episodes,
it would go so fast. There would be not a lot of development. It wouldn't have that binding grasp on your heart when you get to the last moments of the finale.
I love the Jimmy
filler is made to help you grow alongside the character, for you to know more about the character, for you to care more about the character, because filler is always these really like happy-go-lucky things. That's what a lot of filler is. It's just fun, silly moments with these characters.
In animated Star Wars, especially.
Yeah, so you can laugh and enjoy it and have fun with it. So when we get to that episode
when they die,
where Kanan saves everybody, you're like, I'm in so much physical pain right now.
Yeah,
because all of this filler helped build the character.
For 100%. Me, yeah, well said. I love that you brought up books, Jimmy, because I'm reading, you guys know, the Wheel of Time series, which is 14 books long. Every audiobook, like I'm only on book 5. The last 3 have all been like 30 to 40 hours plus. There are many a chapter where characters are in town having conversations among themselves, doing not a side quest, but getting out of a current predicament that they're in, that is not the main giant battle of destiny that's brewing. And what happens is you can feel like, wow, we're still in that town. Like I just listened to an hour and a half and we've been in the same town. But what you realize is like how immersed you feel in the world, in the culture they're in. And so even though, I love the high octane moments and everything, the value of spending time with your characters, being connected to them, being connected to your world, it's that immersion factor that, to your point, Jimmy, makes those heartbreaking episodes that much more powerful.
And the thing, with books, that's why like people, like when you write books, like you have it made and you don't even know. Most of them do know, like take Lord of the Rings, for example, the Fellowship of the Ring, 80% of that book is them just walking.
Yeah.
Nothing exciting.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So but because you have all of these pages to write out, you can get those filler moments in these pages. So like each chapter can be a main story plot and still have filler in it, because you have all this time to write in descriptions, to write in little side conversations that happen as they're walking from point A to point B, to grow alongside the character. That's why it's so different. You can't do that on TV because you have to speed through it, because you're restricted to cost, you're restricted to time, you're restricted to like how many episodes you can make. Sure, they have the money to do it. Would it be a good investment? No.
It doesn't translate as well either. I think like one thing
people would get so bored. That's why everyone's like, and I tell people this all the time when they're like, when they make a book into a movie, why don't they just use the book as the script? I'm like, because the movie would be 36 hours long.
Yeah, it's not the same format. You have to like basically adhere to the standards of each medium, but you want to strike a perfect balance between not boring the audience, but also not barraging them. I mean, one of the main criticisms that The Force Awakens has, for example, is its breakneck pacing, and I agree with it. there is good story in there. There's like heartfelt moments, but it just goes too fast. Like
I love the Force
sometimes,
Awakens. Yeah, it does. It goes very quick. You are right.
yeah,
Yes.
sometimes you just need to hold on a second, wait until we start climbing emotionally, and get to that peak.
A couple
it's
things.
interesting. Maybe that's why people didn't like The Last Jedi as much, because it wasn't fast paced. It was in the exact same spot the whole movie.
Well,
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point.
Oh,
and
that's
the I,
interesting. That's very interesting.
I think the biggest problem with that is just like people were, I think, so it was just not, it just didn't feel coherent all the way through. And anyway, regardless, to something you said, Jimmy, about the books that got me thinking. Like I read the Harry Potter books when I was a little older, and what I loved so much about those books is you felt like you spent a year with them as a crew. And you felt the passing of seasons, and you felt by the time the books ended that you had kind of grown with him and gone through those years.
Mhm.
And one problem I've always had with the movies, even though I think they're pretty good for the time, especially they're really good representations, is you don't feel that same way. Like it's like in the movie, just because the format's limiting, it's like you start first day of school, like 2 scenes later, it's Christmas, 2 scenes later, it's the end. There's the one Quidditch game, it's the end fight, move on to the next year. There's so many side conversations, so many late nights up studying that just help develop the world and the characters. That
Yeah, and
it's
I
important.
noticed that especially with the Sorcerer's Stone. And the first time I read that book, well, I was 22, so that was 5 years ago. Just
Yeah,
because I was like, you know what, I think I should try to read these.
Yeah,
And
I read them at
there's
like
there's
20 as
like
well.
there's like 4 Quidditch matches. There's like a
Yes.
whole backstory on the Dursleys and what they were doing
Yes.
before Harry shows up. So
Yep.
there's like a bunch that goes into it that you just can't put into one whole movie.
We're not going to go down the rabbit hole, but they cut out so many like interesting world building things in those movies that I'm just like, it doesn't matter. They're good. They act, they're good. But like in particular, the Half-Blood Prince drives me up the wall because like they cut out so many like Voldemort. There was like 6 or 7 flashbacks about Voldemort's childhood and his upbringing that like really make you understand the villain like in a whole new light. And they give you one. It's like him at the orphanage, and I'm like,
don't spoil things too much, guys. I have the box right on my top of my shelf. I'm gonna read Harry Potter books.
The books are good. I like the books a lot. I much prefer the books to the movies.
Have you never read them, Ben?
I just got the box set. It's basically my to read list this year.
Oh, I love it. I'm actually hyped to hear your reaction because I love those books.
I've only read the first 3, so hey.
6 is by far my favorite, the Half-Blood Prince, and that's why the movie they cut out some details. I won't spoil anything. The book is a 40-hour audiobook. It's a 2.5-hour movie. Okay, you got it. I mean, that means you are trimming. I mean, you are trimming. All that aside, I do think a lot of the conversation about filler is generated again. I'm gonna use Star Wars Theory. I pulled his channel up while we were talking about this. He's the king, biggest Star Wars YouTuber, right? In his last 12 videos, his 2 lowest rated viewed videos are his last 2 reviews and breakdowns of the Bad Batch. It just doesn't, it's not a click generator. It's not a hype engine generator. It's just good, fun, wholesome Star Wars. And I think that like what some people interpret when they see that is like, oh, it's a drag. It's boring. It's like, no, it's just 30 minutes with some characters we love living their lives. Like that's not everything has to be the season 2 finale of Mandalorian or Tales of the Jedi is all hype moments. They're 15 minutes. The whole thing is 15 minutes. I mean, that's it. That's all the filler
like,
gone.
The greatest thing ever. I was like,
there's no filler. It's just right there.
And that brings up the point is like every time I'm like, well, the beauty about Star Wars is that we're going to get these moments on screen, and then the rest will be filled in later in some other medium. And everyone's just like, well, why do they do that? I'm like, because you don't want filler in TV, apparently.
It's
therefore here's a book with the filler you don't want that's going to be getting rave reviews.
No matter how critical, no matter how critical or how many times I think like, oh, I hate the way they did this, or I could execute it better. I mean, the truth of it is, I imagine if I sat down to organize a TV show, like I'm sure I would make so many mistakes, and people would have 100 better ways to do it. That it's really arrogant of me to do. Because I was just talking about how I didn't like what they did in Book of Boba Fett, but heck, if I made it, probably be a disaster in its own way. I would have probably done 5 things wrong.
I've seen that on Twitter. They're like, you're in charge of remaking the Phantom Menace. What's one thing you change? I'm like, nothing, because I don't know the first thing about filmmaking.
Yeah, I'm an idiot, so it's a good thing I don't have my hands on anything. All right, guys, thanks for talking about that though. I think that was a good way to take that. And I I just feel
we
so
all
many-
just had a very healthy rant. Like
I
all
think
of us
so. I
did.
feel
Like,
better.
We
I feel
all,
better
I feel a
about
little
it.
better.
It's good to have that. Yeah.
I feel better. No, and I used Harry Potter as an example because it's like a book series everyone grew up on, and I know now it's kind of in and out of fashion based on
So
certain
we want to
things.
get destructive. Let's talk about Artemis Fowl.
Yeah. Oh man, actually, I've never finished the full series, but that was
It was a fun
great.
one.
But all of that aside, what I find time and time again is like, shows, especially in a streaming world, have it's a challenge to I think meet what the younger generation and folks who've grown up with this instant accessibility, short form content. I mean, short form content is so popping off now. In the sense that like the generation below us is growing up on TikTok, videos that are effective and funny and educational in less than 60 seconds. And shows like we as a society, especially here in the West, almost have no time for filler in our entertainment. And
Gotta
hey,
go
I'm guilty of
fast
it too.
all the time. Need
Exactly.
it
I'm
now.
guilty of it too, where it's like I want that sugar, I want that high. I want to watch, the fall of Camino every week, the emotion. But
It's
you can't.
addicting.
It is.
I want to
It's-
add
it's
one.
really- it's an
my
addiction.
final thought for the evening, as far as that
Yeah.
we're discussing like how effective ways of telling story is. I think it's definitely there's this cultural shift based on how we absorb entertainment that dictates how these filmmakers and these studios produce content now. But once in a blue, you have these filmmakers come, which are expert storytellers, and they are not looking to follow the trend and find their niche and kind of like slide their content in there. They're so bold and they trust in their vision so much. Something like, Stranger Things comes along and pushes you right back into that aesthetic of filmmaking and storytelling, which to me, without skipping a beat, I felt like I'm watching an 80s show or an 80s movies.
Yeah.
Because when you have something in your hands that is so immaculately well done, it will bring the audience, and it's almost like a splash of cold water. Instead of asking for something that you used to, for something that you rely on, goes like, oh, what is this thing? Everybody's talking about it. Why is it so special? And people go and check it out, and it's a perfect opportunity to change their mindset and say, well, this is how you enjoy watching your shows. Here's something entirely different. Perhaps we're an age gone by how filmmaking used to be. Maybe you will like this as well.
You know what? And this is I will not rant any longer after this. My last comment. So thank you, everyone who watched this long. Steve, for sticking with us as we rant like a bunch of boomers here. But one thing I was taking a marketing class in college, and they told a story about kind of a famous marketing example of, I think it was Ragu or Prego, one of the big pasta sauce companies, was surveying their customers to see what types of sauce do you want. And so they gave them all sorts of options or let them write in their own, right? And so I think they surveyed like 1,000 people or maybe more than that. And then they had them do a blind taste test of what sauce they like the best. And unanimously, like huge margins, like 80, 70% picked Chunky as their favorite of the sauces they tried. And it's one of their top sellers today. And on the surveys, not one person put Chunky as what they wanted. And the idea there is sometimes you have to make something great, and the audience will find it, love it, and they might not know what they want. And so to your point, Ben, sometimes the creative is like, I got a vision, I'm going to tell it. And people don't even know they want it until we've seen it. Like Andor. I think Andor is a good Star Wars example of like, I didn't want that. When they said they were making it, I was like, what? I don't care about that.
It was a paradigm shift for Star Wars, for sure.
I was like, I don't want that. And I was like, oh man, I wanted that. I needed that. That's my Chunky tomato soup there, or tomato sauce. And so that's, I think, like the perfect example of sometimes we just don't know what you want until someone comes around and makes something great and shows us what can be there. So good stuff, fun stuff. I like those kind of conversations, guys. Thanks for going in. Okay, one other call out.
Star Wars is great.
That's right. We all can have our own fun with it in different ways. One other thing I want to call out: we did get some confirmation on who a director of one of the Ahsoka episodes. Let me pull this up real quick. So we know Dave is running most of them, but Steph Green directed one of the episodes of Ahsoka. And if you're like me and we're like, who's Steph Green? Well, she actually has directed one Star Wars episode before, and it was the Book of Boba Fett episode 2, which was the best episode. That's the episode with the train and the tribes of Tatooine.
with the sand people. I really enjoyed that one.
Tusken, easily the best episode of focused on Boba, easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, sweet. Like she had that is my favorite episode outside of episode 5. So that's encouraging and exciting that they've brought in some talented people there. Because one reason I think Andor was so strong is it felt like there were multiple directors, but the creative vision was tight. Every episode fit. It felt really, really consistent in its quality. And sometimes in Mandalorian, like when a new director comes in, some of the episodes, and that could be the writing, by the way, it doesn't have to be the director, but some of the episodes don't feel like they kind of line up. So I would like them in the future to have one director really be able to own a show and take accountability of the direction. But if you're going to have a lot of directors come in, pick good ones. I'm happy that we got a good one in here, because if we're going to be passing the torch, at least we got someone who I have seen give us a fantastic episode of Star Wars in episode 2. So I thought that was some news I saw late this evening that I wanted to call out.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I remember when that episode aired, we were all like raving about it. Like it was
Now that I was thinking back on this, like even checking out my own reviews on the Book of Boba Fett. Yeah, being less than stellar still makes up for a fun thrill ride of a show.
Yeah, it's
doesn't
true.
Have to be flawless.
I love Tamir Morrison too. I love the cast. And when I watch the making of, like I can be easy, I guess, easy going, but like, man, when you see like behind the scenes, like what they're trying to do, and you hear the actors, like there's real passion there. And even if it doesn't work, or you don't like the way it's been, Disney-fied or whatever, like there are people on there who really care about what they're making and are really putting the hours in. And I, at the very least, respect greatly when someone, pours their blood, sweat, and tears into something, even if they made something I don't necessarily like. I mean, it's hard for me to hate on something when someone dedicated years of their life and a lot of time to making it and put it out to where they can be totally harassed and criticized for it. It takes balls. Yeah. I mean, I read my YouTube comments. It's hard. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine putting something out on Disney Plus.
I'm gonna have to sit down with Josh and explain to him that most of the time when we read these YouTube comments, I just think you do not. And this is me saying, I'm not trying to convince myself. I read these comments. I'm like, sir, you do not have enough information to have this discussion with me.
Yeah. Anytime you have something that you're proud of, you put a lot of work into, and you open yourself up to criticism, it's hard, So I'd hate to be an actor who's, getting harassed for some role they played in Star Wars. I hate that stuff because
at Jake Lloyd.
I hate that stuff. I mean, that really makes me sad. Even if I don't like what they did, by the way, like there's the sequel actors do not deserve any harassment, even though I do not like their trilogy. Like that's just ridiculous. And honestly, I don't think J.J. Abrams deserves any of it either. Like
nobody does.
He didn't go into Star Wars like, you know what? I really want to make it bad. That's my goal. It's like, that's Ryan Johnson. Like that was no one's goal. Like, so to me, it's so silly to like take a personal level with it, because it's a weird intent to look at someone else and think like they had the intent of ruining something that I loved.
I keep forgetting the director's name, but he's like a legendary filmmaker and producer who was interviewed with Joe Rogan like about a month ago. And he said they were speaking about the behind the scenes of how a movie is brought together. And they're saying, look, if I were giving out Oscars, I would give it for a completed film, period, because it's a daunting task to like fight with the executives, get the budget, figure out where you need to shoot, the scheduling, getting the actors. It's insane amount of work. So many stars have to align for a movie to just be finished. Forget about being a AAA like Oscar winning, kind of film.
Yep. It's a great point.
We can appreciate it. We don't have to love movies or just like, oh my God, more stars. We could criticize it, but we can also appreciate the hard work that goes into it.
Yeah, it's true. Well, thank you guys for watching the hard work that went into this tonight, because this is basically an Oscar level movie right here. Jimmy, happy birthday, my man! Thanks for spending it with us here on Thursday night. Ben, as always, and these two guys are staying up late to be here, so I appreciate you guys staying up late with me on this weeknight. I'll let us wrap up here so you can catch some sleep. But Steve, thanks for sticking around. Everyone else in chat who didn't type in, we appreciate it. If you're watching this after we've aired, we appreciate you taking the time to watch through, an hour and 20 minutes of us talking about Star Wars. We hope you stop by and have the conversation with us. It's a lot of fun. Until next time, guys, it's going to be a fun year. It's always fun when we have some friends to chat with about Star Wars, something we love. So we'll see y'all again